Zach Laidlaw joins us to talk about the death of Google Stadia and the fallout from it. We break down the new Google Nest hardware announcements, and Michal has a review of the Zenfone 9 and a glimpse of what's to come to Android 14.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is All About Android, episode 598, recorded Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. Stadia, game over. This episode of All About Android is brought to you by HPE GreenLake, orchestrated by the experts at CDW who can help you consolidate and manage all your data in one flexible edge-to-cloud platform to scale and innovate. Learn more at cdw.com/HPE. And by SecureWorks. Are you ready for inevitable cyber threats? SecureWorks detects evolving adversaries and defends against them with a combination of security analytics and threat intelligence directly from their own counter-threat unit. Visit secureworks.com/twit to get a free trial of Taegis, extended detection and response, also referenced as XDR. And by Tanium. Tanium unites operations and security teams with a single platform that identifies where all your IT data is, patches every device you own in seconds, and implements critical security controls all from a single pane of glass. Are you ready to protect your organization from cyber threats? Learn more at tanium.com/twit. Welcome to All About Android, your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm with a really great crossfade. Huyen Twit Dao. I'm sorry, I just kind of lampshaded that. Hi.
Hey, Huyen, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
And I'm Michal Rahman.
Welcome, Michal. Good to have you back. And for those of you who just heard those wonderful introductions, Jason Howell is not with us this week. We're sending some love his way, but we are very excited for the top of the show to welcome Zach Laidlaw. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and we're only going to have you for a little bit at the top, and we're gonna hold off to let everyone know why. We'll get to it in a second. But Zach, tell people where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of my time on the internet on Twitter at ZT Laidlaw. I'm always tweeting about, the topic that we're going to be covering in a little bit is cloud gaming. Before this, Google Stadia, GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, and Xbox cloud gaming platform as well. You can also find me at How To Geek, where I have several columns based around different technology deals. I do a little bit of cloud gaming stuff over there. And I also work with some of our sponsored partners as well.
Cool. So keen listeners probably figure out why we invited you onto the show. But before we start talking about cloud gaming, we got a Google event this week. Here we are on Tuesday, October 4th. And the Google event is Thursday, October 6th. Everybody should tune in. I'm going to be live with Leo Laporte covering the event on Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. But real quickly, before we get into the news, on a scale of 1 to 10, everybody, how excited are you for this event? Zach, how excited are you?
Yeah, I'm actually, even on the heels of what we will discuss in a bit, I'm really excited. I always love the Google's hardware, Pixel devices. I have one in my pocket right now. They're my favorite. So I'm really pumped.
Nice. Michal, how about you? What's your excitement level?
So I'll give you an actual number, even though it doesn't matter. I'm a 9 out of 10, mostly because I'm excited about the implications it means for the Android side. And you all know I'm a huge Android nerd.
We do know that. That's what we do know about you. All right. So Huyen, are you a little more calmer than Michal, or are you at the same excitement level?
I'll give it a 7, mostly of my own doings, because I'm excited for a new Pixel phone for sure as an Android dev. I will say my excitement is tempered because I just got my Z Fold 4 and I have a Zenfone 9 coming. So I've inundated myself with phones. So this is more of a personal problem and not a Pixel problem, but I'll give it a 7. It's always great to see the new Pixel stuff. So
we're going to talk about the Zenfone later in the show. Michelle's going to tell us what he thinks of that, so that maybe they can give you a preview of your future phone. Personally, me, I am at a 10 because I love a good Google event. I love a spectacle. I'm very excited. So Michelle, I one up to you with a 10. So make sure everybody tunes in on Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on Twit, and follow along with me and Leo as we watch the event live. So with that said, let's get into the news.
You know how I like to blindside you guys.
Oh, goodness.
I'm not going to do it. Not this week. No blindsiding in the news by me.
All right, Wynn, why don't you? You got the gold story of the week. Why don't you kick it off?
Well, I got the top spot, and I'm here to inform the Android faithful that Stadia, Google's cloud gaming service that allowed you to play games through Chromecast, Android TV, Google Chrome, Chrome OS, or the Stadia mobile app, is no more. It is ceasing to be. It is bereft of life. It rests in peace. It has kicked the bucket, shuffled off the mortal coil, rolled down the curtain, and joined the choir invisible. I had to do that. I'm sorry. It isn't X Stadia. At least it will be as of all through January 18th, 2023. After that, the service is shutting down. On September 29th, 2022, VP and GM of Stadia, Phil Harrison, wrote in a blog post that surprised Stadia customers, Stadia game developers, and apparently the Stadia team at Google itself, announcing that they are, quote, winding down our Stadia streaming service, citing its lack of, quote, traction with users that we've expected. Google will be refunding all Google Store Stadia hardware purchases and all game and add-on content purchases made through the Stadia store. And as I mentioned, players can continue to access their libraries and play through January 18th, 2023. Hey, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, sort of. Not really. Don't like to celebrate stuff like that. The majority of refunds will be completed by Google by then. So let's talk about the implications of this. So let's go from the Google team and move on out. So apparently, according to anonymous sources, Stadia's own team at Google pretty much heard about the shutdown at the same time that the post went out, meaning this is quite a very, rapid and not last minute, but very sudden decision, at least as far as anyone else was concerned. Third-party game developers as well are feeling some insane whiplash at the surprise announcement. For example, indie game studio SF Games was due to launch Tangle Tower on Stadia 2 days after the announcement, so they were pretty shocked. And even Bungie, makers of Destiny 2, one of Stadia's biggest partnerships, were, quote, unprepared for the news. And in fact, Bungie, and this is kind of the sad thing, and I think what we really want to touch on is maybe not just the story that yet again Google has killed something and we all saw it coming, but that really there was some potential there and that it's now gone. And I think that's a really interesting part of the story is that Bungie developers in particular had leveraged the streaming platform during the pandemic to help them do kind of like continue like testing flows and stuff like that while at home. And so that's something I never thought of, not just from the player perspective, from the developer perspective, that cloud streaming, has some possibilities, but oh well. Okay, so fans, of course, are pretty upset. And if you are a Stadia player, if you aren't a Stadia player, I know the impulse is maybe the reflex to the story is, okay, was anyone actually using Stadia? And the answer is yes. And that's where I want to kick it off to Zach. Now, there's a lot of implications for, fans, lost time and lost effort. If you are a person that spent a lot of time on Stadia, like for example, there's a really famous example of Color, a TikToker and YouTuber who has spent like 6,000 hours on Red Dead Redemption. And now there's a question of whether your game progress might not make it to other platforms. So it's a bummer. And Zach, I know this week that, you tweeted basically how much money you had invested in Stadia. And, obviously you probably spent as much time, a time investment in Stadia as well. And you had said in the tweet that you, quote, hoped it would have been around for the long haul. So to kind of start off, what do you think are the biggest losses and missed opportunities with Stadia, and why did you invest so much into it to start with?
Is the biggest loss to your wallet?
Yeah,
It hurts. Well, it doesn't hurt all that much because supposedly, as long as Google sticks with what they promised, they're going to give us all a refund. Which we had always talked about it in the community. If something like this happened, we always said, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. But if it happens, Google will refund us our money. And sure enough, now they have confirmed that they are at least trying to make amends, which is the best we could hope for. That said, cloud gaming in itself is really a long game in the sense that, it's still a newer ideology in the gaming world. It's not widely accepted. There's still quite a few players out there that prefer native. But really the general consensus among the community is that Google just gave up way too soon. Like I understand and the community understands that it costs a lot to run these platforms and to maintain them and to get developers ported on and games ported on and to generate a player base. But Google just bowed out way too soon. Even the most comparable platform was OnLive, which launched back in 2010 and was shut down in 2015. For anyone counting, it was around for 5 whole years. Stadia was around for 3. Stadia didn't even make it as long as OnLive did, and that was the major comparison that everyone made when Stadia first launched. Is that it's going to be another OnLive? It's going to die before it even gets off the ground. And unfortunately, that is what happened.
It's funny because I feel like when Stadia came out, it just, I personally, for me, I felt, oh, this isn't long for the world. Like there was something about it that just felt like it was a big swing, and knowing what we know about Google and their, let's say, fickle nature, that I early on thought, I don't see this being around for the long haul like you had hoped, Zach. So is it like, am I the only one that felt that way, or how did you feel about it when? I mean, obviously you committed to it early on, so you were into it, right?
Yeah. So it's funny. Most people do see Stadia, and they don't. You see a lot of people saying, "See, I told you so." Now that this news has come out, but there are a lot of players, and I say a lot. It's really a small group relatively, but there is a devoted, loyal group of players on Twitter and on Reddit who love Stadia, invested more money than I even invested in Stadia because we all really believed it. The thing that we all saw in Stadia was that it democratized gaming. It's like you don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds to even thousands of dollars on a piece of hardware just to play a game. You can play it on the devices you already own, which was really appealing to, someone in tech, someone who likes Google products, to be able to grab my phone or to grab my computer and log into a browser and just boot up the game and play it and have virtually no major issues. The thing about Stadia, especially when compared to some of the other cloud gaming platforms, is it's was very stable. Obviously cloud gaming kind of hinges on the strength of your network connection, but even on some spotty networks, you could have a decent experience without having to pay a ton of money on a console. That said, I'm in the long run, I'm not sure how appealing that idea was. And, if Stadia had been around long enough to make it into nations where consoles are harder to sell, India, Brazil, places that could really benefit from sidestepping having to buy a native piece of hardware, then it really could have exploded. But we just didn't make it that far, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to bring up.
I think it's really unfortunate. Like Stadia, like the technology behind it, as you mentioned, it's one of the most, at least like stable and I guess performant cloud gaming platforms out there. I tried xCloud, or I guess they call it Xbox game streaming now. When it first launched, and I think it was using Xbox 360 as its fleet of cloud gaming devices, and the experience was awful. I know they have upgraded since, but like compared to Stadia at the time, it was just. There wasn't any comparison. Stadia was just superior, but because of the business model, because you had to buy the games at full price. You couldn't import an existing game library, or you weren't given access to a huge library like Microsoft gives you. Like it kind of had a tougher sell, tougher buy-in from existing gamers like me. So I think that was one of the biggest reasons why it didn't really catch on as much as it could have.
Well, and the other interesting thing about Stadia's structure, technical background, was that it was built on Linux and Vulkan. And whenever Stadia games and entertainment, their first party studios were still a thing, and they were working on the very first cloud native game for the platform, that all made sense. Linux and Vulkan, they didn't, they were open source software, and they were building their own projects. But that also made it more difficult for all of these big game developers who were used to developing games for Windows and DirectX. They had to invest millions just to get their games ported on to Stadia. And of course, whenever Stadia games and entertainment shut down, then they were still left with Linux and Vulkan and a bunch of third-party devs that just didn't have the patience or time or money to invest in porting their games over for a small player base. If they had gone with Windows originally, would things have been better? I mean, you can always say, yeah, of course things would have been better. We don't really know. I think it could have been a bigger advantage. But at the same time, Amazon Luna is built on Windows and DirectX. And even though they're still around and they have a much different business model, they don't have a ton of games either. So it really makes you wonder if it's the effort it takes to port, if it's the player base, if it's just cloud gaming's too new and people are still trying to get used to it. Then you take GeForce Now, which has integrations, direct integration with Steam and Epic Game Store, and all of those platforms. You just have to flip a switch, and then your game is on GeForce Now. There's no extra coding involved, and even GeForce Now, even though it has over 1,000 games, which is more than, Xbox or Stadia or Luna, it's still not, 50,000 games, 60,000. It should have way more than it does now. So it really makes you think that, maybe cloud gaming really is a slow burn, and it's going to take some time before, devs want to sign on and players want to sign on and everyone's comfortable with it. I do personally still think it's the future of the industry, but it's going to be a very long time before we get to that point where it's on full parity with native, or it even starts to surpass native.
So, it really does feel like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Oh, no, after you, Win. Go.
No, I think maybe Zach, you said it, but it's maybe gone too soon. Because to be perfectly honest, when I first heard about Stadia, I love the idea of cloud gaming. And I think that for the reasons you mentioned, especially Zach, that it's more democratizing. But I think part of it, which I guess we'll probably end up talking about, is a little bit of that Google hesitancy, like the hesitancy of consumers to buy yet another Google thing that might not work out. But, and so I kind of stopped paying attention to it after a while. But, kind of like now that it's going and looking into it, I was actually pretty impressed that they had gotten Bungie and Destiny 2 on board. There were rumors that Stadia had secured exclusive rights to Hideo Kojima's next game. So it feels like, as you said, maybe it was just revving up and kind of getting to a place. Maybe not Stadia in particular. I know you're talking about cloud gaming, but I don't know. It just feels like, oh, wow, they were doing a lot better than I think a lot of people gave them credit for. And I guess right now in the kind of belt tightening world that a lot of companies in, and we've talked in recent weeks on the show about different kind of initiatives and things that Google is kind of cutting down on. I just wonder whether it's just an unfortunate gone too soon. And maybe if they had been given more of a chance, they could have maybe done more and kind of gotten more widespread appeal. I don't know. Just seems like really unfortunate the more that I look at it. So
yeah, honestly, it's a massive shame because at least everyone in the Stadia community who used this platform daily, I used it daily all throughout 2020, and we all saw the potential in it. But really, we're saying that Stadia is officially dead, on January 18th. But technically, Google kind of gave up in 2021 whenever they shut down their first party studio. Not only was that kind of the death knell of, maybe Google doesn't believe in its own platform, or, maybe they're just, they're bleeding too much money and they just can't afford to keep that part going. There was also a significant hit to the amount of AAA games that were coming to the platform. And all of a sudden it went from these lofty promises of, we can compete with Xbox and PlayStation, and we're this big, massive platform that can support, your favorite AAA games. And it went to, okay, now we're focusing on indies and kid games and all those things. And granted, that all has a place. But if you're trying to appeal to the mass audience, the quintessential gamer, you have to have, developer support, major developer support, AAA games, the latest, greatest titles. And you also have to have really great hardware, which is something we haven't touched on yet either. But Stadia's server blades are aging, compared to a new Xbox Series X or a new PlayStation 5. They don't keep up anymore. They don't have ray tracing. They don't have the graphic fidelity. As it did whenever Stadia first launched in the previous generation, when it was going up against Xbox One and PlayStation 4. It did great against those devices, but it was not positioned to compete with the current generation of consoles. And Google expressed no interest in trying to upgrade those server blades, and understandably so. If they were bleeding as much money as we suspect they were, and this was always headed downhill, you understand why. But it was never built to compete after they threw in the towel in 2021 for their personal, their first party studios.
So I just want to say one thing. I think it's wise that Google did choose to shut down Stadia, because it's clear the future direction of this technology is licensing the technology itself. What they had is a gold mine for licensing to other companies. Like we're seeing right now with Nintendo on the Switch, a lot of the games they're getting, at least the AAA games from Capcom, all the Resident Evil games, for example, they're all cloud gamings, titles. They're not actually being natively run on the Switch because it's completely underpowered. And so I think there's a huge future in cloud gaming for Google to tap into. Like, say you have an advertisement that's run on YouTube from maybe a creator who's running a partnership with some new game that's come out, and then users can click a button and say, try this game right now, and just have a free trial run, and then they can quickly upsell those gamers potentially to buy the full game, through whatever white label service that Google is running. And I think that's the huge potential that Google can capitalize on and, build and expand their partnerships. Instead of becoming a first party gaming platform and game development company like they tried to do with Stadia, I think just being the back end for everyone else is the best thing they could do from now on.
Which honestly, whenever you take into account, Google Cloud and that's that whole infrastructure and what it represents, it makes a lot of sense for Google to be the back end. That said, me personally, given Google's reputation, and I know that there's been a lot of debate of whether Google actually kills its products or it just evolves them. The ones that die tend to go on and to be bigger, better things in other Google products and services. But you have to wonder, there is a piece of me that says, okay, Stadia is gone. We still have, I think it's Immersive Stream for Games, ISG, which is what Michelle was just referencing. But are companies going to trust Google that they're going to keep this running and want to invest in it? Given Google Cloud's reputation being around as long as it has, I say probably yes, but the Stadia closure is a massive hit to Google's reputation as far as killing products.
For sure. So I just thought the timing was super curious, given that we're literally in mere days away from a very public facing consumer product based event by Google. So I'm curious to see when and if or how it comes up at all on Thursday. Michelle, I think your point was great, but my question was they built up this great infrastructure. What are they it's such an asset? Do you just let it mothball, or are they going to go down the licensing route? We're going to see it powered by or whatever. Time will tell. We'll see. I find it completely fascinating by this whole thing. But the way it all played out, the shock and awe everyone had, Zach, your reaction to the dollars, we saw other humorous reactions online of people reacting to it. It's just crazy. So, well, Zach, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us your expertise on the matter. Again, where can folks find you if they want to follow along to your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ZTLAIDLAW. I also write for How to Geek Daily. And yeah, you can find me pretty much on those two places.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you coming to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, bye.
So moving on from Google Stadia, a story that we've been tracking very closely, which is the EU and its legislation around unifying charging devices and how Apple being proprietary and all that fun stuff. Well, there was a vote recently today, in fact, where the European Parliament voted to back the EU legislation to standardize mobile chargers on USB Type-C. Which will for the law to be applied by the end of 2024. And it was a whopping 602 in favor of the directive with 13 against, with 8 people abstaining, which I like. Who's the person who abstains on this vote? By the way? They're just I don't get involved. I don't get political and power thing. But so USB-C is the common device charger for the European Union. And so now the big question is, what does Apple do? Are they going to have to adopt it and support it? Will they only adopt it and support it in Europe and stay proprietary in the US and other markets? Or, but another chapter moves forward in the charging legislation story here. What do you guys think of this?
I think it's, long overdue. Finally, someone stepping in and saying, you got to cut down on the mix and match of chargers and ports you have out there and standardize on something. And of course, that something is USB-C, because that's what everyone else except for Apple is using.
Yep.
Yeah. And I kind of like that the law also includes more consumer information, because they need to provide specific compatibly relevant information for all the chargers. So I'm all for that too, especially after being the person who has been Googling for many years about all my myriad chargers that get orphaned, and I don't know whether I can use this for another thing. I think more customer information is always good. I think that is a good piece to go along with mandating. I still feel a little funny about what's going to happen if USB-C never, stops being the bestest and most widely used port. That's always the question. But what
happens when USB-D comes along?
Yeah, and it's really awesome, and it I don't know, drops diamonds out of the sky. I don't know. I mean, there's always going to be a better thing that's technology. So I think it makes sense to kind of hold some accountability. And maybe even if this doesn't work out, if USB-C becomes defunct at some point in the next 5-10 years, at least that's a precedent for trying to minimize, wasteful proprietary stuff.
Yep. So. Agreed. And USB-C is pretty great. And I will say on the topic of Apple, though, it was funny. I was actually at my day job today. I was in a meeting with somebody from Apple, and I instinctively, it was so funny. I found myself like I took my phone out to check it during the meeting and then quickly put it back in my pocket because I didn't want them to see that I had a Pixel.
What is that, Ron?
Yeah, but after my wife just got her a new iPhone, and I got her set up with the wireless charging and getting a new brick and stuff like that, and it was just like, and the fact that USB-C, like Apple's not using USB-C, right? Like that, like it is, right. Like it is in some. I mean, my MacBook Pro has got USB-C on the side of it, so it's not like an unknown technology to them that they refuse to acknowledge. It's just
Absolutely.
the dependency on the Thunderbolt port and their all proprietary aspect and what goes actually into the phone. But we'll see what Apple's response is to this. They could either choose to comply and only do it in this region, or choose to not comply and get fined, or we'll see. So, all right. So, Mishal, you just can't leave well enough alone, can you?
When it comes to Android, no, I can't.
You cannot. So,
a great answer. That is the only answer.
You're digging into Android 14, huh?
I mean, Android 13, Google never stops, so why should I?
So what did you find in your digging into Android 14?
So, I mean, and there's no Android 14 build out there right now. If I did, it's only available at Google, and it would be a big problem if I somehow had my hands on that. But what I do have is, through a lot of code digging in AOSP, there are some things that trickle out publicly, like intentionally by Google. And if you dig through their documentation, you can find some references to say, this feature will be going to Android 14 because we didn't have time to do it in Android 13. So I've collected as much information as I could of those features that are publicly mentioned that will very likely be in Android 14. And I put together an article on that. And there's actually stuff that I haven't yet to add to this article that's like in my to-do list. And so there's a lot more stuff than it's even documented here.
So what's the most interesting from the stuff that you are speculating will be in Android 14?
Well, these aren't speculations, I should clarify. Like, these are for sure things that Google is at least planning to implement in Android 14. But to answer your question, I'd say the one I put on top, the predictive back gesture, I think that's the one that the vast majority of people will immediately recognize, because right now, if you have a device running Android 13, you go to developer options, you might notice there's a developer option that says predictive back animations. And right now, when you toggle that within certain apps, you'll notice that when you're doing the back gesture, you can see the animation there. You can see like a preview of the home screen as you swipe back to go home. And so basically what that does is it basically solves the ambiguous nature of what happens when you're doing the back gesture. Like, sometimes when you're going back, it takes you back within the app or it takes you back home. And you don't really know what's going to happen until you actually just do that gesture. But with Android 14 and the predictive back gesture, it's going to tell you, like, are you going to go back home or are you going to go back within the app? And the reason this is becoming an Android 14, even though it's already kind of baked into Android 13, is because this requires developers to update their apps to support it. And this is going to be enforced in Android 14. So a lot of apps will need to be updated to support it. And I'm sure, I don't know if you've taken a look at this yet, Win, but this is probably going to cause a lot of headaches for a lot of developers because of just, it's going to require almost every app to be updated.
Yeah, I totally agree. Luckily, I'm working on a Greenfield app. Ha ha ha. But no, that is absolutely the case. If I was at my old job, it was one of the things that I talked about before I left. It's like, we need to fix this. And they actually, from a developer standpoint, have laid the groundwork for you to update to predictive back navigation. So if you had been a good developer and had kind of followed their like new back gesture libraries and kind of had kept updating with Android X and Jetpack, which are the developer libraries that handle some of this, you would have been good. I can tell you that at my old job, it was not something if we had anticipated this, we probably would have been more up to date, but back gesture navigation implementation is hard and there's a lot of like negotiations with other people. So there's a reason why it gets messed up. but this is probably the way to have forced our hand to fixing it. So that's good. But yeah, I'm all good. I just have to make sure that my Greenfield app is awesome from the start. So good luck, other devs. My bad. What?
And some of the
Michelle?
Yeah, so some of the other features that will be exciting for users. I mean, there was one thing that Hiroshi Lockheimer tweeted about there's going to be expanded support for satellite connectivity in Android 14. Nobody has any idea what that really means, but it's the hottest new thing that Apple has announced and T-Mobile and Starlink announced. So of course everyone's going to be excited about that. But there are a couple of other things like right below the Android resource economy. I think that's going to be really interesting and also another source of headaches for developers. Because Google is trying to wage war against rogue apps that are doing stuff in the background when they shouldn't be. And in this case, there's there are a lot of APIs that apps can use to schedule work in the background. So like if you want to say, I have some work that I need to be done at a very specific time or at some time close to some time, it doesn't have to be exact. Like there's an API called the Alarm Manager they can use to do that. Or if they just have something they need to be done at some unspecified time in the future, they have another API they can use for that. But the problem with using these APIs is that apps can basically queue as many of those tasks as they want through this API. So like you can queue maybe up to 50. And if you have 100 apps times 50, that's a lot. That's 5,000 tasks might be queued in the background. And your phone doesn't have unlimited battery life. So like if you have all these tasks constantly being queued and your phone waking up from idle mode, that's going to destroy your battery life. So what Google is working on is this really interesting in principle concept called the Android resource economy, where basically it treats your device like a bank. So like the Android will dole out a certain number of credits based on your battery life, and then it will assign those credits to apps, and then apps can spend those credits to perform certain tasks. And like how much those tasks cost to spend, or how much those tasks they have to spend credits to actually perform depends on the task they're doing. So like certain tasks may cost like 10 credits to perform. Certain tasks may cost like 5 credits to perform. So like this really complicated economic idea of using basic supply and demand to solve how do we determine whether or not apps can do certain tasks in the background. And it's like there's a lot of these underlying things that are being changed, and because it's such a complicated thing, Google didn't finish it in time for Android 13, so now they pushed it back to Android 14.
Cool. Well, I wonder if we'll hear about Android 14 in the event on Thursday. Doubtful, since Android 13 just came out, but I suppose we got to wait until probably early next year to see all this stuff confirmed. But Michelle, this is up on the blog over at Esper, right? So people can go dig in and read on this if they want to.
Right. And probably by next week, I'll probably update it with even more info that I just mentioned. It's far from done.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you for that taste of Android 14 to come. We'll see how it all plays out. Wow. What a news block. That was so great. And we're going to move on to hardware in a moment. But first, we're going to thank our first sponsor of the evening, because this episode of All About Android is brought to you by HPE GreenLake, orchestrated by the experts at CDW. The people of CDW understand that your organization needs simple management over its big data. But with workloads remaining on-prem due to legacy systems, it can feel challenging to organize and optimize your data. And that's where CDW can help your organization by consolidating and managing all your data in one flexible, unified experience with the HPE GreenLake Edge to Cloud platform. The experience you'll get with HPE GreenLake is unique because no matter where your data or applications live, you can free up energy and resources with automated processes and streamlined management, and we could all use more streamlined things, right? Not only that, HPE GreenLake creates a seamless cloud experience among multiple data environments thanks to the as-a-service model that meets your remote workforce at the edge. And with unrivaled scalability, you'll see an instant increase in capacity, allowing for greater flexibility and accelerated business growth so your team can tackle bigger priorities like innovation. When it comes to streamlined management, HPE makes data transformation possible. CDW makes it powerful. Learn more at cdw.com/HPE. That's cdw.com/HPE. And we thank them for their support of All About Android and for being awesome. Thanks, HPE GreenLake, orchestrated by CDW. We appreciate you. So with that, let's move on to hardware. All right. And so even though we have the aforementioned Google event on Thursday, Google took it upon themselves to announce some new products today. Didn't see this coming, or maybe we did. So Google actually made some announcements today focused around their Nest products and Google Home specifically, and everything around the smart home. Which, if you have a bingo card for Thursday, you got to want. Do you have to cross that box off? Is that Nest smart home products not going to be talked about on Thursday, or are they laying the groundwork for a larger announcement related to it? Who knows? Time will tell. But so what they did was with the Nest products, they announced the second generation wired doorbell from Nest. As well as the Nest Wi-Fi Pro with Wi-Fi 6E support. And they also announced a new redesigned Google Home app, citing the fact that the Google Home app's been around for 10 years now and now works with over 80,000 different works with Google Home devices. And so what they're doing is they're redesigning the app so you can quickly access cameras or watch your video history or automate your smart home. They're adding an automation tab with more starters and actions to make automation easier. And next year, they're teasing that they're going to launch a script editor with 100 new features and capabilities so you can make routines to fit your needs. So we got a new Nest Wi-Fi Pro, Nest Doorbell, second generation, and Google Home app redesign all today. Michelle, what do you think of this rollout? Did you see this coming?
I honestly did not expect them to announce what they did. Like, or like last week, I think I posted after Stadia shut down. I made like a thread of like, what products do I have high confidence or absolute confidence that Google wouldn't kill off? And I didn't put Google Home or the Google Home ecosystem in either of those lists. Like, I thought it had like a medium chance of surviving within the next 5 years and being killed off. But after today, I'm really hopeful and excited for the future of Google Home because they've actually shown that they are really putting a lot of effort into it. And I'm a lot of the features you wouldn't really expect to come out of Google, like the scripting feature. Like, if you look at all these other Google products and services, what they tend to do is they like to introduce really complex features that are like, powered by complex AI algorithms behind the scenes. But to the user, it's just a simple on-off toggle, or sometimes you can't even turn it off at all. But here, Google is throwing in a full scripting interface for you to control exactly what happens with your smart home devices. And I'm like, this is so anti-Google in terms of user-facing features. It's really great to see.
Yeah. But why today? That's the question.
Maybe, I guess maybe they felt bad for all the tech journalists who aren't embargoed and have to cover everything on Thursday. So like, we'll throw you a bone. We'll split some of it up and give it today.
Make it a little easier to handle.
Hey, we don't kill everything. Look, Nest's still here. I mean, I know we're all mourning Stadia, but hey, look, Nest. Look at this thing over here, right?
Well, it's
right.
funny you mentioned that because Michelle, what did you spot that actually happened in this role?
Oh Lord, excuse me.
Oh. Well, it's not my finding, but
yeah, but you called attention to us earlier, yeah.
Yeah, so evidently the marketing materials for the Nest Wi-Fi Pro, they left some references to Stadia in there. So in like the quality of one of the network features is like network optimization, and like in the description for it, it says that it can help you optimize for Stadia gaming. And obviously, if you haven't heard for like the past hour, that's not going to be a thing anymore.
Oh man. That's too funny. Well, and that just shows that how many people didn't know about that rollout. I mean, it's hard to you throw a rock in a pond and the ripple effect that happens. This is what it shows. Mm-hmm. So, all right, so a little tease ahead of Thursday. We got a new doorbell, new Wi-Fi, a new Google Home app to look forward to. So I'll be curious to see how this plays into the larger conversation on Thursday. Well, speaking of gaming, Quinn, what could you do if you wanted to get a gaming phone?
Well, it's actually so we need to bring. We wish we could have brought Zach back just for this because we talked about the Logitech G Cloud last week, which is the Android-powered Logitech device that is kind of cloud gaming centric and includes connections with Steam and with Xbox. Well, not to be outdone and not to let the Steam Deck, G Cloud, and the Switch have all the fun. On September 28th, Razer, in collaboration with Verizon and Qualcomm, announced an Android-powered gaming handheld called the Razer Edge 5G. So this is just yet another, hat in the ring of handheld gaming devices in 2022, 2023. There's not a lot known about it just yet. There's a little bit of a tease. And as you can see here, it is that same, form factor that we've seen again and again which started with the Switch and now, has gone through the Steam Deck, G Cloud, and now with this Razer Edge 5G. Now, you might be hearing me say 5G, and that is because this handheld will tout 5G connectivity, presumably through the collaboration with Verizon. And it will also, in contrast to the Logitech G Cloud, which has kind of more an affordable price, a little more affordable price level components, will sport the Snapdragon G3X Gen 1 gaming processor, which was first unveiled last year. And there has been a dev kit version of this going out, and it seems like it is kind of going for kind of sacrificing a little bit of that, broader appeal, mid-range appeal for power. And so we really won't know. And they're going to have an event on October 15th at RazerCon. They will have a full reveal, but let's just speculate now, because that's something we occasionally do, is to kind of listen to rumor and speculate that this device might have a 120 hertz display, front facing camera for streaming, and full display port output from its USB-C port. And it really looks like in this niche of handheld gaming devices, Razer is going for something with 5G connectivity. So rather than being kind of tied to Wi-Fi, your cloud gaming can be certainly on the go, and perhaps maybe targeting more, robust gaming. I don't know. It's a little more high-end seeming. But again, we don't really know. We just know we got this little tease of the device. And there was a bit of a, that's pretty awesome. Sorry, for the audio listeners, the little teaser has like little laser, like it's showing like the trigger on the underside of the controller and showing little lasers coming out of it. Pew, pew. There is an Xbox logo that appears at the end of the trailer, so presumably some kind of X Games box support will be available, but we will find out more on October 15th about the latest in Android-powered gaming. So
I will add something there. We know the Logitech G Cloud, or the other device you talked about just now, that one has a Snapdragon 720G. This device, however, has a Snapdragon G3X Gen 1, which I've been tracking for a while, and I believe is a derivative of the Snapdragon 888, which is last year's flagship Qualcomm platform. So it's going to be much more powerful compared to the compared to the Logitech G Cloud, based on what I've seen. And there have been Geekbench benchmarks of this device before, and there might even be a Wi-Fi only model. And we can only speculate at this point because we don't really know much about this device. But that's what we know so far.
Yeah, it's definitely a different tack, because we were talking about this last week about where in the spectrum between Switch and Steam Deck and this growing kind of class of devices does it sit? And so Cloud, G Cloud, has this niche. And so as you said, this seems like a more like super powered device. So we'll see. And I guess presuming because it has these like kind of more higher performance components, it probably is more expensive? ? Speculate. But yeah, probably another thing that I'm going to put on my pre-order list. I don't know. Are you either of you interested in the Razer Edge 5G, and in particular like the 5G connectivity aspect of it, which is a little bit different?
I'm still mad at Razer for acquiring Nextbit and killing those phones, but I'm glad to see them live on in the Razer phones. And this is what I would expect from Razer. I mean, this is the type of product that we would expect to see them come out. So, I definitely think it's interesting and curious to see what comes up from the event later on. So.
Yeah, the price will make or break my interest in it. Like, if this thing is priced more than a Steam Deck, then there's no way I'm going to get one.
Right.
Yes. Kind of same.
How much is a Steam Deck again? How much is that?
I think it's pretty cheap, actually.
It's a range. There's a range. There's like a higher end version, a lower end version. So I don't want to tell y'all how much I got the higher end version.
It looks like $399 for the 64 gig, $529 for the 256 gig, and $649 for the 512 gig. So Michelle, if it's more than $649, you would not get it.
If it's more than $649, you'd be crazy to get one over the Steam Deck, honestly.
Absolutely.
True. Totally true. So, awesome. All right. Well, we'll look for that from Razer. But Michelle, you were not crazy enough to whatever. I lost that transition. But you got a Zenfone 9. Tell us about it.
I have it right here. I don't know if you can see it. I got it from Asus, actually. I'm kind of beta testing it / reviewing it at the same time. I really love this device. So if you love smaller, more compact phones. I know like small is kind of a controversial term to use because this thing is still 5.9 inches and it's not an iPhone mini level of compact phone. But compared to like something like the Pixel 5, like if you love the form factor of the Pixel 5, I think you'll love the Zenfone 9. This is basically the Pixel 5 Pro that never got released by Google. It has a very similar form factor. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor, the latest gen, the 8 Plus Gen 1. So the much more efficient version of the 8 Gen 1. And it also has, 120 Hz display, OLED display. It has a significantly upgraded camera compared to the Zenfone 8. Like the Zenfone 8 kind of like a mediocre looking design and camera system, but whereas the Zenfone 9 is a more, I guess, modern design and camera system. I think I upgraded from the Pixel 6 Pro. It's the previous phone that I used, and I think that I had a lot of trouble with the connectivity on the Pixel 6 Pro. So I'm really glad that I have a phone that doesn't constantly lose connection and require me to toggle airplane mode anymore. I'm just so glad I have a phone that's usable indoors now.
That's brilliant. Isn't that like such a low bar? Usable indoors.
That is that is such a low bar, but that's what we Pixel 6 Pro users had to live through.
Have you noticed anything with like the gimbal? Because I think that was like what we touched on and what I kind of like nerding about on was like the gimbal for image stabilization. And it's kind of like that's their cute hardware feature. I think that the Ace is flavored. Have you noticed anything with it, like in terms of like taking video?
It's better than like the software-based stabilization, like a lot of other like hyper stabilization features. I don't know, whatever they call it on the other phones. I think OnePlus has something like that, where they use ultra wide camera and like heavily crop in to try to stabilize it. But like this one, it does it with a main camera and both cameras, and it works much better than those ones. But I think compared to what I've seen, it's not as good as what iPhone does with their, I don't know what the iPhone calls it, but that one is really good. If you've seen videos of it like on like a moving car or like a bus or something. It's pretty comparable to that, but I think it's not as good. Okay, and cool. One of the golden questions, battery life. Sorry, Ron, my bad.
Oh no, go for it. Battery life. How does it look like?
Battery life.
Oh, yeah. That's the killer thing. It's excellent for such a small phone. Wow. You think, you might have to sacrifice battery life, right? But no, you don't. I think it has a 4,300 milliamp hour battery. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for such a compact device, and it's not super thick, 4,300 milliamp hours, that's enough. I get like 6-7 hours screen on time. That's with the display set at 120 hertz all the time. Speaking of the 120 hertz display, I'm a little disappointed it's not the LTPO variety, which allows for like the variable refresh rate. So it's either 60, 90, or 120. And the reason I'm disappointed that it's not variable is because like in some apps, whenever I want it to be 120 or 90, it like the system forces it to be 60. And I'm like scrolling through and like, ew, this is so slow looking. So I just set it to 120 at all times, and I don't bother changing it to auto anymore.
All right, cool. So when you have this phone on order, right?
It shipped today. I'm excited. I'm really excited.
I was just going to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, after hearing about this from Michelle, how excited are you? So are you at a 10 for this, or
11? I'm at an 11, man. I'm at an 11. Wow. I mean, just for a lot of I have a lot of friends and myself that kind of reminisced about the days of small phones. I think the Nexus 5 is still my top 2 phones ever. And, just a lot of what Michelle has said that I'm really excited about. Good battery life, like interesting stuff with the camera, and even just, good quality components, man. And also just trying something that isn't that isn't a foldable and that isn't a Pixel phone. I'm super excited. 11. It gets an 11, especially after this review. So
it's great. There's something to say about mixing it up. I do. Yeah. Variety is the spice of life, right? So.
I mean, you will have to compromise on a few things, like with every device in this kind of price range. Like, there's no wireless charging, and like I mentioned, there's no like the variable refresh rate, and you don't get a telephoto camera, for example. So like, there's going to be compromises, but like there are things that I personally don't mind, and what I'm getting is a compact flagship that does a flagship and the compact part really well. So I don't really have any complaints.
Those are all things that I don't mind losing. So I'm excited for a great phone. And I mean, I guess to go from a great phone to a less than great phone, I do have to let our users know that the Pixel 4, by the way, to talk about not great phones, is hitting its last security update. It is end of lifing. Wow. I get all the really happy stories today. So
the wah-wah.
wah-wah. The October 2022 Android update is going to be the last update for the Pixel 4. After 3 short years, this phone released in October 2019, y'all. That's all she wrote for the Pixel 4. So, yep, burying one, and we'll see how the Pixel 7 goes.
There it is. Goodbye, Pixel 4. I mean, we're about to get the Pixel 7. So, I mean, like, that's several, it's several, 4, 5, 6, like, 3 generations later, it had a good life. So, and it will still work, mind you, but it just won't get those security updates. So be careful. So.
Yep.
All right. And real quickly before we move on, it's been a while since we've heard from our friends at Nothing, right? It's when the Nothing Phone 1 launched this summer, they made a big splash. I got an email from our friends at Nothing announcing their next event, which is coming up on October 26th, where they're going to announce the Ear Stick. And I'm going to read verbatim what it says here. Ear Stick is coming. Made not to be felt, ergonomically molded to your ears, exceptional sound, powered by custom sound technology, delivered in a uniquely compact case. So if you remember, Nothing's first device that they released was the little in-ear headphones. Now this is the Ear Stick. I don't know what that means. The photo just shows
what that means.
The woman holding what looks like a little capsule thing. It sounds like they're describing like cans, like headphones, but it says in a uniquely compact case. I don't know what that could mean. So, although I will say ergonomically molded to your ears makes me think that it's not in ear, which, as you know, is my preference for audio devices. So as always, I'm intrigued by Nothing. So.
You're intrigued by Nothing.
I'm pretty sure it's another pair of TWS earbuds, true wireless earbuds. But I have to harp on one point, Ron. You said it's been a while since we heard from our friends at Nothing, and I don't know. You're probably familiar with their social media strategy and how vocal Carl Pei is. I don't believe you when you said it's been a while since we heard from them, and if it is, you're going to be hearing a lot from them in the near future.
I will say,
true.
Burke, if you scroll down really quick on that page, we got to move on, but you got to see like. I think if you scroll down, there is that it? Yeah. I think I'm getting so the whole thing about the marketing, I'm kind of getting it more because they've partnered with a kind of like, I want to say avant-garde. I don't know anything about fashion, but a kind of like fashion designer for part of the Ear Stick. Yeah. And I just think this plays into the, like the StockX thing and like kind of appealing to a certain like demographic fashion kind of hipness to it. So anyway,
For our audio listeners, the in the Nothing blog, they're announcing their partnership with this designer, and there's a pink, someone wearing pink clothes, and if you scroll down another one, there's someone wearing green. Like it is all very fashion first in terms of their
fashion
marketing.
Forward, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the picture of somebody in all green with the Nothing phone in their pocket, sticking out through a mesh kind of pocket, so you
I
can
didn't
see
even
the
notice
lights,
that.
the LEDs opening up around it. Yeah, they're definitely going for a specific thing, which is a type of people, you know what I mean? Like that, it may not be, us, it may not be techies, and it may not be, but it's definitely, they're looking to connect with somebody. So it's interesting. So always interesting. What's also interesting is after this break, we're going to talk about some apps because we got some interesting app news. But first, we're going to thank our second sponsor of the evening. We want to thank this episode of All About Android being brought to you by SecureWorks. Because SecureWorks is the leader in cybersecurity, building solutions for security experts by security experts. SecureWorks offers superior threat detection and rapid incident response, all while making sure customers are never locked into a single vendor, which is so key. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which means now is the time to raise awareness about digital security and empower everyone to protect their data from cybercrime. SecureWorks has the perfect solution. Now is the time to get Taegis XDR. Why, you might ask? In 2022, cybercrime will cost the world $7 trillion. But by 2025, that figure will grow to $10.5 trillion. In 2021, ransomware totaled $20 billion in damages, and attacks occurred every 11 seconds. But by 2031, ransomware is projected to cost $265 billion per year and strike every 2 seconds. That is some freaky numbers. Make sure your organization is not the next victim with SecureWorks Taegis XDR. SecureWorks Taegis provides a superior detection, identifying more than 470 billion security events per day, prioritizing the true positive alerts, eliminating alert noise and allowing organizations to focus on the real threat. In addition, Taegis offers unmatched response with automated response actions to eliminate threats before damage is ever done. With SecureWorks Taegis Manage XDR, you can easily leverage SecureWorks experts to investigate and respond to threats on your behalf so that you can cut down dwell times, decrease operational burden, and reduce cost. And with 24/7 by 365 coverage, whether you experience a Christmas Day security event or half your team is out sick, you can trust SecureWorks is behind you. Many companies are facing a shortage of security talent. SecureWorks acts as an extension of your security team on day one, alleviating cybersecurity talent gaps, allows you to customize the approach and the coverage level you need. What happens if you already found an intruder in your system? There's no need to worry. I want you to write this number down, all right? 1-800-BREACHED. That's 1-800-BREACHED. That number will connect you with the SecureWorks Emergency Incident Response Team, and they can provide you with immediate assistance 24/7 in responding to and remediating a possible cyber incident or data breach. At SecureWorks, you can learn more about the ways today's threat environment is evolving and the risk it can present to your organization, including case studies, reports from their counter threat unit, and more. Visit secureworks.com/twit to get a free trial of Taegis XDR. That's secureworks.com/twit. SecureWorks, defending every corner of cyberspace. And we thank SecureWorks for keeping us secure and safe and sponsoring this episode. And with that, let's dive into the apps. All right. So, Michelle, what's going on with YouTube in 4K?
So, Ron, over the weekend, a couple of users on Twitter spotted some threads on Reddit from earlier in the month that whenever these users tried to, change the quality in YouTube to 4K, they noticed that they had to upgrade to premium in order to do so. And so, obviously users were outraged because this is a feature that had already existed for years on YouTube. And all of a sudden you had to upgrade to premium in order to unlock it. People don't like when you have an existing feature that suddenly becomes an upsell. And so, this outrage blew up on Twitter over the weekend. And then The Verge spotted a comment from Team YouTube on Twitter that basically confirmed this was being tested. That YouTube itself hadn't issued a formal announcement, saying they were A/B testing this, but it seems this is indeed something that they've been testing with at least a few users.
Well, here's the thing. We were talking about Google earlier with Stadia, right? And probably and we don't know, this is all speculation, but one of the things is that Google needs to make money, right? And they need to provide value to their shareholders. And Stadia clearly, the spreadsheet didn't add up in terms of we were talking about earlier in the show with Zach, whether or not Michelle, as you mentioned, the business plan and the cost of games and the number of users and all the math that goes with it. And, something companies do is they look at their products and say, where do we have value and where can we squeeze out dollars from that value? And we've got this thing called YouTube Premium, where I happen to be, I pay for YouTube Premium because I don't want to see any ads. And what else sounds premium other than the best resolution that you can get, right? I get it. I also get why users are outraged by it, right? Because it's something that we've had for free that is now going to go behind the paywall. But I understand where they're coming from as a devil's advocate.
Right. And they're not the first one to do this. Netflix, they've never offered 4K streaming for free. Yep. It's always been behind a higher tier. So YouTube doing it is not surprising. And I can understand bandwidth is expensive and how many hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. It's unfathomable amount of video and data they have to deal with. So I can totally understand why they lock 4K behind a premium subscription. And I myself do subscribe to premium, and I do most of my viewing is probably at 1080p. I don't think I consciously pick 4K all that often. So I can understand why they do it.
Yeah, I think it's a really fair point too, is what do people actually use? And I would say most of my viewing, certainly on a phone, I'm never using 4K. And even on the desktop, I think usually 1080p is appropriate. So I think that's really fair. I also pay for YouTube Premium, by the way. So maybe we're just, a very specific inclination of users. It is interesting to note, though, in The Verge, they noted that, of the 2.24 billion YouTube users in 2021, only 50 million were premium and music subscribers. So that's 2% of users. So I I think that kind of the story plays a little bit into maybe some gripes that you can have with YouTube about how they pay creators, about how they handle ads, yada yada. But to be fair, yes, as y'all have said, bandwidth is expensive. 4K video is like four times as big as like HD. It's a lot of bandwidth. So someone's got to pay the bills, and certainly we help Google do that. But I don't. I mean, it's a bummer, but also it's still a business. I don't know how else to say that. And it does sound kind of Google Kool-Aid-y.
That's the harsh reality. That's the harsh reality is that like business. we've created a ecosystem and a marketplace that devalues value. Right.
Yeah.
Like we've created like, and Google's partially to blame because they came out on the scene so strong in like the Web 2.0 days with like all these great services and it's free and you can do this and it's free. And slowly we're watching the erosion. And, now you want Gmail for your private domain. You've got to pay for workspaces, right? Now you want all that great storage from Google Photos. You got to pay for Google Photo Store. Like it's all starting to come back to needing to provide value because it's sad, but true. They've almost done the old drug dealer kind of thing where first one's free and then come back and we'll get you for more, right? Because we are so like I'll totally cop to it. I'm so dialed into the Google ecosystem that when photos, were no longer free, I was like, well, I'm not going to stop using photos. I'll just pay, right? And and I'm very lucky that I'm in a position where I can afford to do that, and I'm thankful for that. But it could potentially end up being death by 1,000 cuts if you've got all these various services that you're getting all these little microtransactions to cover all the things that you're kind of somewhat addicted to in use of Google. But all three of us already pay for YouTube Premium. I asked in the chat room, and some people are saying that they already do as well. So it's just it's fascinating to see that number being so low, although 50 million people is a lot, but in comparison to 2.2 billion, that's nothing. So
I think if I just want to return, I think the reason there's been so much outrage on Twitter about this is because it was already an existing feature that seems to be in the process of being locked behind, a paywall. Yeah. And people don't really like existing features being converted to paid features. So if it was a feature that, they originally introduced as part of YouTube Premium, then I think there would be a lot less outrage because, there's already precedent for that being the case on other platforms. And if you look at like other platforms like Twitter, they just introduced an edit button, like a really, really, really basic feature you'd expect of like a social media platform. You can edit your own posts, right? But how many people are angry at Twitter for locking that behind Twitter? Twitter Blue.
I agree with you. And we talked about the edit button Twitter Blue on a previous show, and I applauded Twitter for charging for it because it's something that people value, and if you really want it, you can subscribe for Twitter Blue. But Michelle, the challenge with YouTube is, what are they going to introduce a new resolution and then put that behind the paywall, right? Like, can people afford to buy whatever the thing after 4K TVs are? Like, it's somewhat boxed into a corner where what is the feature, what is the functionality that can be new, that can be introduced, that they can provide value to, versus what is a core function that people actually want that has value that, to your point, probably should have been valued earlier, but now they're adjusting. So it's hard. It's definitely and I do think that they should be pressured to come up with new features to make that value for YouTube Premium. For me, just not seeing ads is enough value for me to pull the trigger on it years ago, right? But I see your point, but I don't know what other direction they can go in. What they're gonna introduce some new way to scrub through videos and charge for that. Like it's not going to happen. It's a very singular platform in terms of what it does, right?
I think at my old company, I guess I can talk about this now. It's kind of awesome. They did something similar where they took previously freemium features and eventually they had to make money. And a lot of times freemium features, at least for when I worked at Trello, the things that went behind the paywall were things that I think, to be fair to them, that they looked at numbers and saw, okay, this feature is actually predominantly used by people that pay us already. And so it's not just like a random thing, or not necessarily that maybe to kind of put a positive spin on it, that Google is trying to say, oh, hey, what's the cutthroat thing that we can do to make people pay, like, and kind of put them in a bind, or I'm trying to think of a wrestling term, but like kind of I don't know, like force people into things. It might be just maybe only certain people are using 4K. Maybe they see a majority usage of 4K on premium accounts anyway, or at least that the numbers just don't seem like everybody's using 4K, that they would see a lot of like users, I don't know, stop using. So there might be some logic behind it, and not just what can people not need, or what do people definitely need. So there is numbers into it. It does suck. And yeah, people got to get you got to pay the developer. There's people making this stuff and they need to eat. I know it's Google, but it's
not even that you got to pay the developers. Is that the Google's got to provide value to their shareholders? Yeah, I mean, clearly they need to pay their developers, but which they've been doing, which I think they could continue to do. But that stock price has got to go up, so it's got to stay.
Yeah. And they're not blocking content, so.
No,
sorry.
Well, and another area of Google that is still free that is rolling out new features is Google Maps. So recently at Google's announcements at Google Search On 2022, our good friend Florence Ion wrote in Gizmodo about it, recapping all the updates that are coming to Google Maps, including a new feature called Neighborhood Vibe, which basically will help you get the vibe of your neighborhood by surfacing user reviews when you're scanning through the area. And what Google said was, to determine the vibe of a neighborhood, we just clicked away. Sorry. To determine the vibe of a neighborhood, we combine AR with local knowledge from Google Maps users who add more than 20 million contributions to the map each day. And do you remember I don't know if you remember a couple of months ago, I was complaining about Google Maps just being completely inundated with stuff other than the map. Like when I opened up the maps at local guides and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It seems like an aspect of that is continuing. So I again, like, I'm all for more features around Google Maps, and tell me about the place I'm going, but just let me see the damn map. As far as seeing the damn map, they're also rolling out Immersive View, which is kind of a modified satellite view, 3D view that lets you kind of get immersive in a location. But yeah, it's pretty neat. These features can start rolling out globally in the coming months to both Android and iOS. For the Vibe feature, all you need to do is tap the Explore button when you're in an area on Google Maps, and it'll bring up the latest local guide reviews. So you can get the vibe. There it is.
Right. I have never felt so old as when I read the title of that article. It's like vibe check. And I'm an old person now for my vibe. What check. Is the vibe? What does that mean? What is the vibe of a neighborhood? Maybe I'm just sorry. Just feeling old, y'all.
I don't see myself making much use of this feature.
I know. It's the thing with Google Maps is it's so utilitarian. Like, I don't use Google Maps to explore an area. I use Google Maps to figure out where I'm going when I know where I'm going, right? And it's like, sadly, this is like Google Maps trying to fold in Yelp, or to a certain degree, where like, I want to find an Italian restaurant kind of thing, which makes sense. I understand. I could hear the conversation where they would have it, but it just seems somewhat challenging. So, yeah. So.
There was one more announcement from the Google Search On that I really wanted to bring up, because I know so many of us are going to find so much use out of it. And it's the new tab that they're working on for Google Search that lets you search for something through community forums. So, like, I don't know how many of you have been like appending Reddit to the end of your Google searches because you find more authentic results that way. But basically, Google's baking that into Google Search now.
Ooh, that's interesting. Cool.
It sounds good. I want it. Gimme.
Give it to me.
Gimme.
So one other note before we move on, we all know that today there was some news coming out about Android Auto and driving mode, etc. We are going to talk about it. We're just waiting till Flo comes on the show because we want to hear her rant about it. So that's coming soon. So there you go. All right. So that said, now that we got the vibe for Google Maps, Huynh, you got a tip for us from JR?
Yeah, well, speaking of Flo, the last time we had Flo on, Jason made us cop to how many Chrome tabs we actually had open on our phones. And in the course of that discussion, Flo and I both expressed frustration of when you use like the Google search or Google widget, basically when you don't use Chrome to do a Google search, how the search has its own in-app browser, which has its own separate history from Chrome, making our shopping and other important tasks more confusing and difficult, and which in fact discouraged us from using the Google Search app. Well, JR heard us and of course has some Android intelligence to redirect us and our searches to the right place. What you got for us, JR? Me and Flo in particular, but for all of us.
Hey, all right. Today I've got something special for you. It's a tip I wanted to talk about because it's It's such a common pain point for so many of us on Android, myself included. In fact, you know what made me think about it? This very show. A couple weeks back, Flo, Wen, and Jason brought this subject up. We were talking about some of the Chrome tricks we've been doing these last couple sessions, and it's one of those things that has always driven me crazy too. What I'm talking about is the habit Android has of opening stuff you search for in a special little standalone browser. It isn't quite Chrome, it's just like its own separate deal. Comes up in a lot of different places when you start a search, from the bar on your home screen, from the Discover screen, from the Google app itself too. Now, it's supposed to be a feature because it supposedly makes the results show up a little faster or something, I think. I don't know. Man, what I can tell you though is that I really hate it. Just like Flo and Wen were saying, the problem is it makes it all too easy to lose track of your results. Your results show up in this little standalone semi-browser thing. You switch to another app and then they're just gone. Be so much more sensible to have search results show up in your actual browser, in Chrome or whatever browser you're using, where then they could stay there as a tab and be there when you come back to look for them until you decide to close it down and swipe it away. Well, the good news is there's a really easy way to make that happen. So first, open up the Google app on your phone. Tap your profile picture in the upper right corner, then tap Settings and then General. Now you see the line that says Open Web Pages in the app? Yeah, that's the one we need. Turn that thing off. And that's it. The next time you start a search from your home screen, the Discover screen, anywhere in the Google app, any results you open will show up directly in Chrome or whatever browser you're using on your phone. No more weird standalone custom tab thingamajiggers. And here's a quick bonus tip too. You can actually follow that same pattern in other apps on your phone that use the same sort of in-app browser setup too. So like in Gmail, for instance, there's an option in the general settings area to open web links in Gmail. Yeah, so flip that off. Flip it off in any way you want to interpret that sentence for that matter. Once you do, any links you open in an email will go right into your browser instead of into that maddening in-app interface. And the best part is you've only got to make these switches once. Once you do it in any of these places, all the searches, all the links you tap from then on out in that area will show up right where you want them in your browser. They'll stay there until you decide you're ready to close them. Much better, wouldn't you say? Hey, remember, you can get tons more tips like these by signing up for my free Android Intelligence newsletter. It'll give you 3 cool new things to try in your inbox every Friday. Just head over to androidintel.net/twit to get in on the action. That's androidintel.net/twit. I'll see you there, and I'll see you right back here next week.
Now that is what I call a tip.
Heck yeah.
That is something that has bugged me for literally years.
Yes. I'm ecstatic. I'm just, thank you so much, JR. Thank you. I'm getting emotional. It's so good.
I know. I did not know about that. Michelle, did you know about that? Or?
I mean, to be fair, I've always just kind of defaulted to opening Chrome. I've never actually used the Google search app to search for something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's better instincts than us.
All right. Well, thank you, JR. Those tips are fantastic. We appreciate it. Now we know. And we're going to talk about your tips in the feedback, which is coming up next. But before we do that, we're going to thank our last sponsor of the evening, because this episode of All About Android is brought to you by Tanium. The industry's approach to cybersecurity is fundamentally flawed. IT management and security point tools offer only a small piece of the solution needed to protect your environment, and many of them promise they can stop all breaches when they simply can't. Making decisions based on stale data and trying to defend your critical assets from cyber attacks with tools that don't talk to each other is no way for IT teams to navigate today's attack surface. It's time for a different approach. Tanium says it's time for a convergence of tools, endpoints, and IT operations and security. They have solutions for government entities, education, financial services, retail, and healthcare. Trust their solutions for every workflow that relies on endpoint data. They've got asset discovery and inventory, track down every IT asset you own instantaneously. Risk and compliance management, find and fix vulnerabilities at scale in seconds. Threat hunting, hunt for sophisticated adversaries in real time. Client management, automate operations from discovery to management. Sensitive data monitoring, index and monitor sensitive data globally in seconds. Tanium protects organizations where other endpoint management and security providers have failed. With a single platform, Tanium identifies where all your data is across your entire IT estate, patches every device you own in seconds, and implements critical security controls all from a single pane of glass. Kevin Bush, the vice president of IT at Ring Power Core, says Tanium brings visibility to one screen for our whole team. If you don't have that kind of visibility, you're not going to be able to sleep at night. With real-time data comes real-time impact. If you're ready to unite operations and security teams with a single source of truth and confidently protect your organization from cyber threats, it's time you met Tanium. To learn more, visit tanium.com/twit. That's tanium.com/twit. And we thank Tanium for being so innovative and helping us protect our security. Thank you, Tanium, and thanks for sponsoring this episode. And with that, it is time to hear from you, the amazing All About Android community. As always, you can email us at aaa@twit.tv. That's AAA@twit.tv. Or you can call in at 347-SHOW-AAA. Nobody really does that anymore. You can send in an audio file too, or a video file. We like that. But lots of you type emails, and we love getting your emails. And in fact, Quinn, you've got the first one.
I muted myself because I'm sick and I was coughing. Sorry. So our first email actually comes from some Twit fam. Our very own Aunt Pruitt, host of Hands on Photography, sent in our first feedback this week. This is so awesome. Hello, AAA squad. Miss Quinn in particular. Oh my gosh. Hi. Ant's my dude. Hope you're doing well. I'm unbelievable as always. I recently had an app update. It's an app that would show me Black-owned businesses I could potentially support. In previous versions, the app allowed me to punch in a zip code to query an area. Now, the app has updated and requires a Google or Facebook account to proceed. Red flag went up for me, but I decided to contact the developer asking why it would be required to use those accounts to utilize the app. I'm assuming it's all about data harvesting, selling. The dev responded to me asking, would an email sign-in help? I responded with, I thought you all were tapped into a Google Maps API to retrieve geolocation data. A zip code should be the only requirement in my opinion. They responded that maybe they'll use a combination of the two in the future. Anyway, am I out of line thinking this is a bait and switch? I used to be able to plug in a zip code, and now they're wanting more info from me as a user. Or for a service like this, is it really required to have Google or Facebook accounts to query this data? And that is from our Twit's very own Aunt Pruitt. I mean, I always like to assume best intentions, but to be perfectly frank, if they didn't need an account for me before, to do the function that you have stated, where they're just looking up, geolocation data, no. I mean, again, in assuming best intentions, and it's a little. I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry, someone else talked.
So I'm just trying to think through this from what I know. So if like the app existed previously, it updated and now requires you to use your Google or Facebook account to proceed. So does that mean they are relying on Google and Facebook for auth, basically, right?
Yeah.
As many places do. And I gotta say, as somebody who
That sounds 100% true.
Right, and as somebody who maintains his own app, which doesn't depend on Google and Facebook for auth, and we actually maintain our own user data, but GDPR, privacy, all these sort of things come into play when you are gathering user data and storing on your own things. And if it's a small independent app that maybe might not have the resources or the legal capabilities or things like that to do it correctly, leaning on Google or Facebook is an option so that you can still have users have individual accounts, but not have to manage all the auth side of it. Right.
Well, it sounded like it was completely accountless before. Like it was basically anonymous mode.
Right.
Yeah. So now
So
they're
I don't know about
requiring. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know about this particular case, but just a general tip for anyone who's signing in or is afraid to sign in to a Google or Facebook account on some third-party app or website. Pay close attention to what it actually says when it says X app would like access to your, and then it'll list like your account details, your profile name. It'll actually tell you like when you're signing into your Google or Facebook account and you're giving access to another app, it'll tell you what that app has access to, like the scope of privilege that it has access to. And that's very important to keep track of. So certain things may just like say all they need is your username. Certain things might need like full access to your Google Drive account, or they might need access to a certain folder in your Google Drive account. So like it's really important. That's one way to make sure you're giving too much access to a certain application, or whether or not an application is relatively harmless in what it's accessing.
That's a really good tip. And yeah, definitely a way to stay more informed. I don't know, kind of going back to what Ant is concerned about. It's a little disappointing that dev wasn't a little more transparent with them. I think best intentions is maybe they want to introduce, maybe the developer wants to introduce things like favorites, save places, more like tailored information. And that's totally fine. And that is a legitimate reason to have an account. And as you said, Ron, just going through Google and Facebook for auth is just way easier than doing it for yourself. Absolutely. I think 110%. I would hesitate to call it a bait and switch. It could be the dev just wants, I mean, assuming best intentions, the dev could just want to offer more features and functionality. And then that would be user account type. I mean, I try to think about all kinds of things like, is it a metrics thing? But there's ways of kind of counting and doing metrics without needing an account of giving a user ID. I don't know. I would say, dear Ant, that if anything, maybe just ask the dev for more clarity. And if you're not comfortable, then don't. I've done this many times where I don't feel like the account is needed, so I don't do it. So I don't continue to use the app, and that's unfortunate. And if you're the dev of this app, I'd just say more transparency is good. I mean, there's lots of valid reasons for needing an account, but maybe if someone asks you, be a little transparent if you can.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I'd be curious what the notes on the app update were. In relation to that, because again, like, if you're going to change something about the way it works, you got to explain why you're changing it, what value it's going to add. And like, what's interesting is Ant, who I love, Ant's the best, but only gave us a glimpse of the conversation he had with the developers where they're saying, would an email sign in help, which is, so clearly they're thinking about how they're handling authentication, but the question, Ant kind of responded saying, well, no, I just want to give you a zip code. But my question would be like, well, why do I need to make an account? What are you offering?
Exactly.
As in an app functionality to provide that. So it is interesting. It's hard to be an independent developer, and it sucks because it seems like this app, which, provides, geolocation for Black-owned businesses, is very handy. It could be very useful to the community. I hope that they're doing, it's very easy to jump to nefarious suspicions, but like, hopefully they're trying to add to it and grow their app and give you more features and ways to maybe for you to submit entries or things like, who knows what they could be doing that all would require unique accounts versus anonymous.
I was kind of hoping that maybe they would be showing you this information on Google Maps. Maybe that's how I would think it could be useful to the user. Yeah,
potentially. Like that. But explain.
I think Google Maps it does list if a business is Black owned. I think if you click on it, but not like find nearby Black owned businesses. I don't know if Google Maps does
whatever
that.
it is that this business does.
Right.
Why Ant feels value for it.
Yeah, and actually, now that kind of relevant to stuff we talked about, maybe we should check out Ant, I don't know, check out the data safety section. And I mean, if they're not giving you information, check out the release notes, as Ron mentioned. Check out the data safety section and see. Oh, hey. The app would give a list, not a map. Hi, Ant. Ant's in Discord right now. Would give a list, not a map. So it's not integrated with Google Maps. So it's kind of tough. It's weird because anonymous mode and accountless functionality is kind of like a hard. It's like it obviously benefits the user to have accountless modes. It often benefits the developers for some reasons to have accounts depending on what your functionality is. But yeah, kind of a change like this without more transparency is really tough.
Just explanation of what the functionality that's coming with the account would be. So, all right. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Ant, for watching and listening and writing in. We love you. Our next email is in response to one of JR's tips. Email comes in from Peter, who says, I was a bit confused at first when watching the Chrome tips segment on the latest All About Android. Welcome back, Flo. Hi to Huynh, Jason, and Ron.
Hi.
And when asked to look at the number of tabs I had open on my Pixel 3, as shown by the number in the rounded corner square, my square did not have a number, but something else that with my 67-year-old eyes could not make out what it was. After a while, I stumbled on the method of showing open tabs, and boy, what a long list to scroll through I had. I started tapping on the X in the top right corner, then realized that I could swipe left to close tabs. Eventually, I got bored and Googled how to close quote-unquote all tabs. Doing this told me how many tabs I had open after closing I don't know how many. The number of open tabs that I closed in one fell swoop was 895.
What?
Yes, 895. Mind you, that is less than one a day for the time I've had the phone. That is amazing. And that reminds me of the limited times where I've been with a friend and seen either their phone or their laptop and seen the number of like unread messages in their inbox, and have seen friends with like literally tens of thousands of unread messages. And I'm like, how can you live with that red dot showing you a number higher than 10,000? Right? So,
you should look at mine then. Yeah. But mine are all red. They're just not deleted.
Oh man. So, cool. Well, thank you, Peter. And I'm sorry. And I'm glad that we could show you how to close those tabs. So there it goes.
I'm still astounded. Peter, you win. Whatever prize there is for this, you win it. That's amazing. 895. Excellent.
Holy cow.
Yes. Oh. Yeah, well, I guess it's now time for the email of the week, which comes from Joe from Brooklyn, New York. Joe says, as someone who is heavily invested in Google's and Apple's ecosystems, I can confidently say that I will do everything in my power to avoid investing any more time and money into any new Google products. The death of Stadia confirms that Google is not serious about creating a good consumer experience for their users. They kill messaging apps left and right. Am I really going to trust that they will care about RCS in a few months? They release a Chromecast, an Android TV, then a Chromecast powered by Android TV, which has a different UI than Android TV devices like the NVIDIA Shield. They killed Google Play Music in favor of YouTube Music without moving all of the features over. The list goes on and on. Someone needs to explain to me why they deserve any of my money. Yeah, I think
fair. This is
it's fair.
This is this is actually a challenging thing. The way I evaluate it is when I'm looking at any new Google product, I think to myself, how does this relate, or how does it generate money or serve some purpose to one of Google's core businesses? And core business being obviously Google Search, Google Ads, Gmail, Google Maps, YouTube, things that they will never in 100 years kill off. Like these are sticking around. These are fundamental to Google's business. So like, if I can imagine how would this benefit those products in particular, then I'm confident in like saying, okay, I'll invest in it, or they'll stick around for like 5-6 years. So like when Google Assistant came around, right? You were thinking, oh, maybe they might kill this off, but think about it. How much data do they collect, and how does that generate like potential for their Google Ads and Google Search business? And you can see the tie-ins are immense. So I'm thinking Google Assistant is a pretty safe product. So that's the way I look at like new Google products and services. I try to relate them to one of their core products and see how they might survive.
I mean, but the thing is that Joe, I get where Joe's coming from here. And there's an old phrase that even predates technology that is actually which is buyer beware. Right? Like, like every time you choose to spend your money and provide a service, or provide, money for a service or for a product, you take a risk in that company will be there to back that product and to support it and go with it. And Google's not the only company that has existed that has killed products or gone out of business or no longer supported something. And oftentimes in a very frustrating way. Like there are products that we've loved. I mean, hell, I talked about Nextbit earlier in the show where we were talking about Razer. Nextbit was a phone startup that made a phone that was innovative, and I loved it. I loved the look of it. I loved everything about it. And they got acquired by Razer, and Razer killed the product line. Did I lose by spending my money on that phone? I mean, yes, it was an acquisition, but it's just like, I don't know. It's just, it's tough because everything is a risk. And, this could happen with Apple, with any Samsung, anything. Like if you like the Note, you're out of luck. And the Note is gone. Samsung killed it. Right. Like, so I don't know. It's just, it's tough because I think you do hold, we're in the rhetoric of your email, you're holding Google to a high standard, which honestly any company cannot be held to because they need to make decisions for their own business. And every time you spend your money, that's the risk you take. I don't know. That's my opinion. That's my thought.
Yeah, I definitely feel it. Like, so it's interesting because like as a Android developer, kind of this sensation. So the relationship with developers and Google is a little bit different because obviously I'm an Android specialist. So rather than being a consumer, I mean, in a way, I'm bought into the Google/Android ecosystem in a different way. My career, my job, as opposed to like, my TV and my smart devices. Just for, I guess, flavor, this kind of, feeling like Google does things and then we get disappointed kind of exists in its own microcosm in the Android developer space, sort of. A lot of times they'll introduce features or APIs. Most of them SDKs, things like instant apps and certain nearby features. And there's been a lot of stuff. There was one about Google Actions, things like that. So in a similar way, like a lot of these products filter down to us as well. And I think the Android community has also developed a slight hesitation or skepticism when it comes to new things. And at the same time, though, every now and again, they hit something out of the park. So example, Jetpack Compose, which I will not talk about, but have your drink if you're playing the Jetpack Compose /Win game. It's really weird when it first came out, there was the same skepticism. And surprising all of us, including me, like they put the time into it. They got a lot of developer feedback. They did a lot of things that were right. And they made a great experience for developers and people love it. And it is the way to do Android now. So I don't know what the answer is. It kind of reminds me, I always think, Ron, about how you always talk about how the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, if that's the phrase. And I feel like that happens at so many levels in Google. And maybe it's just a huge company thing. And I think sometimes I try to temper my skepticism, remembering the things that hit. And maybe with developers, with any kind of consumer, whether they're consumers or developers, maybe figuring out what works is hard. And I don't know. I'm not excusing anything, but I just think it's interesting, kind of like the parallels. And maybe that's why we're getting the Nest stuff a bit early. Maybe that's why this and what's that. Like they have to kind of just have some wins and hope that we just remember the wins and forget the losses. Forget the losses, but Lord knows we do not forget the losses. Seeing all this feedback and stuff. So I don't know what the answer is. It is absolutely frustrating, but I don't have anything.
And listen, when it works, it pays off. It works really well. And and the thing is that like and not to dig into Joe's email because it was the email of the week. So, but he says, that like he says they kill messaging apps left and right. Am I going to trust that they will care about RCS in a few months? Well, RCS isn't an app. RCS is the protocol, the underlying protocol underneath all those messaging apps, right? So RCS is bigger than Google. It's not even Google alone, right? It's a larger thing. He says they release Chromecast and Android TV, then another Chromecast powered by Android TV. And you're right. That is a product mix within a line of products, but choose the product you like. I was using the NVIDIA Shield and I switched to the Chromecast powered by Android TV because I liked it, right? And you can still use, your old Chromecast. Like there are options within there, like they're trying different things to see what sticks for when something does hit the home run. But at least, Stadia and Google Play Music are the two big examples of like, here's a thing we know you like and we're killing it for reasons that you are not involved in. And that's very hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. And
one last point is that there's nothing forcing you into being an early adopter of these technologies, especially now that or that you're already wary of Google killing off things. You don't have to jump in to a new Google product like immediately when it's announced. You can just wait a year and see how it pans out. If people seem to really like it and it has obviously has a bright feature, then you can jump in at that point.
And that's a great point. That's a really, again, it goes, buyer beware, choose how you want to spend your dollars, and nobody will fault you for not taking a risk. So, all right. Well, thank you, Joe, for writing in from Brooklyn. I was just in Brooklyn today, Joe. Maybe I walked by you. So good times. You can write in to the show, shoot us an email at AAA@twit.tv. Maybe you could be the email of the week. All right, my friends, we made it through the show. Great job. Fun time. Hwin, why don't you tell us where people can find you when they're not on the show?
Well, I am an Android developer and I often talk about Android and other technical things. And you can find my technical talks and accompanying video and code on my website, randomlytyping.com. And otherwise find me at Queen Code Monkey on Instagram and Twitter. And in fact, if you haven't had enough Pixel event, stuff after Thursday with Ron and Leo on the live stream, you can find me on This Week in Tech with Leo on Sunday, live at 2:15 p.m. or 2:15 p.m. Pacific and 5:15 Eastern. And I'm really nervous and excited. So you're going to get extra me and Ron next week. Yeah.
You're going to do great, Hwin. Twit is so much fun. And I'm sure, Leo and Leo will have a great time diving into all that stuff. So that'll be great.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'll definitely be watching Thursday. So.
And Michelle, sir, where are you getting under the hood of Android on a minute by minute basis?
So for the latest updates, you follow me on Twitter at Michelle Rahman. That's where I post, my stream of conscious, whatever I found right in the moment related to Android. But if you want to find my long form content on what's coming in Android, what's new in Android, you'll find that at esper.io. And by the way, if you're looking for, help deploying a fleet of Android devices, that's what the company I work for, Esper, specializes in. So come check us out at esper.io.
Very, very cool. And thank you, Michelle, for your dedication to Android. We appreciate you. All right, folks can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at RonXO, and check out Scorebit in the Google Play Store. If you're into pinball, just check it out. Tell me what you think. We want to thank JR Raphael for giving us that awesome tip. Be sure to check out JR over on Android Intelligence. Huge thanks, as always, to Mr. Victor and Mr. Burke for doing the ones and twos behind the scenes and taking care and making the show run on time. Really appreciate it. And again, without Jason, hopefully we'll be back next week, because Lord knows my voice can't take doing all those sponsors. I love it though, so it's great. I'm not complaining. Fantastic. In the meantime, make sure you check out Club Twit, our ad-free subscription tier. All of our shows with no ads. Also, an exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed with tons of extra content and a members-only Discord. You might have heard earlier Ant was in the Discord. That's where he is. That's where the party is. So go check it out. Club Twit, $7 a month, or you can pay for a full year of $84 per month. Got to be in there if you're a Twit fan. Please do check that out. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be on Thursday morning with Leo covering the Google event at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. So be sure you tune in to twit.tv. Check out the live coverage as we are going to see what Google has for us and see what they have to say about the Pixel 7 and anything else that might surprise us. Maybe a watch, hopefully a tablet, hopefully a foldable. We'll see. Let's hope we have some surprises. So that's it for this week. You can catch All About Android every Tuesday as it publishes on Tuesday evenings, or you can come here and watch live at twit.tv/live. Subscribe at twit.tv/AAA. You can leave us a voicemail at 347-SHOW-AAA, or you can email us at the aforementioned AAA@twit.tv. That's AAA at twit.tv. We thank everyone for watching, for loving Android, being part of this wonderful community. We'll see you next week on All About Android. Take it easy.
Adios.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I am the host of Hands-On Photography here on Twit TV. I know you got yourself a fancy smartphone, you got yourself a fancy camera, but your pictures are still lacking. Can't quite figure out what the heck shutter speed means? Watch my show. I got you covered. Want to know more about just the ISO and exposure triangle in general? Yeah, I got you covered. Or if you got all of that down, you want to get into lighting, making things look better by changing the lights around you. I got you covered on that too. So check us out each and every Thursday here on the network. Go to twit.tv/hop and subscribe today.